Hi, this is Julia Sutliff, and I'm going to show you how to tone your board and then sketch with the slurry of orange paint and medium that you've made. I make a medium that's half stand oil and half odorless mineral spirits. And to start toning my board, I just mix the medium with the paint and paint the board with a bright orange. And what this does is it puts down a tone. I will wipe it up in a minute, so it will only leave, half of this color behind, a very light beige. But the nice thing also about this toning is not just the color that I put down, which makes it a little bit easier to work with than a white ground, but also the fact that this slight amount of stand oil that's in my medium and the OMS2 will make the surface slick. It will dry as I work, but at the beginning it's nice and slick so that when I sketch into it, I can erase my marks very easily. So there I've put down my layer of paint. Oops. And now I'm going to wipe off the paint. So now I have a very lightly toned board. And in order to sketch, first I always find my midpoint. And then I use this sort of slurry that I've left behind on my board, which is part paint and part medium, and I sketch with it. Of course, it's always helpful to find your edges, the middle points of your edges, the upper diagonals, corners of your edges, your midpoint. It makes it a lot easier to sketch if you know where everything is. I wanted to show how easy it is to erase with this method of sketching. So I have some marks in here that didn't work or that weren't right, and I can just take them right out. And that makes it, again, the slickness of the board and the fact that the paint and the medium haven't dried yet make it so easy to erase. It's a lot easier than sketching in paint because paint is so much harder to take up, especially paint against a dry ground. Once I've finished my sketch, which is usually pretty sketchy, pretty rudimentary, then I actually go back and erase my sketch. It leaves behind just a little bit of a mark. This way I've taken up enough paint so that the paint won't pollute the paint I'm putting down in my next layer. So I'll just keep erasing until I feel like this surface that I have left is pretty dry and there's not a whole lot of loose paint left, so that I won't be picking up this orange paint as I put down my next layer of paint. But I have enough marks left behind so that I know where I'm supposed to work, where everything is supposed to be. And that way I don't have to worry about positioning so much as I'm putting down color. So it sort of frees me up. So I try to get down these dark branches, as many as possible. Well, not as many as possible, but as many as I think are necessary before I start painting, because again, when you get those darks that you need directly down against your ground, those will be darker than any eventual dark you'll try to get down on top of another color. So I try to get those darks down first against the ground. And another nice effect is that as you go in and paint light colors around those dark colors, it will look as if the light is sort of fighting to come through and dissolving the edges a little bit, and that is sort of what it is like, or at least that's my experience of looking at something with water behind it. The light comes and sort of breaks up the edges. Now I'm going in and trying to paint the lightest areas. So I've got my darks down, now I'm going in and painting my lightest lights. That way, again, they'll be down against the ground. They'll be as bright as they'll be able to be against the ground, as opposed to being put on top of another color. And I'll just try to work around them for the rest of my painting. You'll notice that I haven't put in every single branch, and I may go back in and put additional branches in, but I've saved areas for, I haven't put in the very, very skinny branches, which are almost dissolved against the bright background, because they wouldn't look, they'd be too dark if I put them in early. So I might just go back in and put them very faintly over top of the light paint. So I have all these light blue areas in, but now I'm going back in and trying to put in these very, very light yellow areas where the sun is hitting the leaves. So, you know, I got my blue areas in and tried to do it quickly and without thinking a whole lot or paying too much attention. And as a result, I'm going to have to go back and pick up some of that blue. But I don't consider this, you know, going backwards in a bad way. It's sort of like that's sort of the back and forth you need to do. If you're going to be free and move forward freely, you are sometimes going to, you know, go places where you're going to have to go backwards later. So I've already erased right here. I'm erasing down here, and I'll put in some very light yellow there before I move on to my middle tones. So now I've stopped with my lights and darks, and now I'm putting in my midtones, as you can see. I still will go back and correct my lights and darks as I go, and if I need to, I'll wipe down to the ground to make sure the darks go down dark and the lights go down light, but mainly focusing on finishing and filling the canvas at this point. I just wanted to point out before I go a whole lot further, just that, or just how, you know, I'm trying to represent the movement of these leaves, and I'm not trying to create every leaf. And sometimes, you know, I've tried to get a little detailed, and then over here I was starting to get too detailed, and I could feel that it started to get a little too, just maybe homogeneous, like too many of the same kinds of marks. So I went over with a big brush and made some larger marks, and that makes more of an emphasis on movement and less of an emphasis on detail or things. And I should also say that it just creates balance and, you know, so there's some larger strokes, some smaller strokes, some less defined empty areas, some more defined areas, and the more of a balance you can have overall, and the more you can use the different strokes and different brush strokes to create a feeling of movement, I think the more successful the eventual painting will be. I'm not sure if I'm finished, but this is as far as I'm going to get today. Thanks for watching.